The following program will make you want to grow things and experience new and wonderful dreams about your plants, garden, and garden design. Listener participation is always strongly advised. Good evening and welcome to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board, send us an email right now. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to this episode of Down the Garden Path, where each week we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice for your plants, gardens, and landscapes. As landscape designers and gardeners, we think it is important and possible to have great gardens that are low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen. I'm Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design for the past 11 years. It is currently a design-only business here east of the GTA. And joining me is my co-host, Matthew Dressing. Welcome, Matthew.
Hey, welcome, Joanne. Good evening, everyone. I am Matthew Dressing, horticulturist and landscape designer and owner of Natural Affinity Designs. Natural Affinity is a landscape design and garden maintenance firm servicing Toronto and the eastern GTA. Joanne and I enjoy doing Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting, relevant, and helpful topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from each other, from our research, and from the guests that join us here on the show. As always, we welcome your questions via social media and emails.
That's right, and we want to thank you for joining us here live on Down the Garden Path. And we want to remind you that we will also issue this show out later this week as a podcast. So you can check out past podcasts and past shows at Down the Garden Path on your favorite podcast app. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so you'll always be notified of new content. And please like, share, and leave us a comment. Those are always welcome. And so I'm really excited about tonight's show. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
We've talked at length over the years about the ever-growing trend of growing your own fruit and vegetables. But tonight we're going to look at one fruit which is perhaps a bit more difficult to grow here in the GTA, lemons. Joining us is our guest, Stephen Biggs, and he's also known as the Garage Gardener with his own show here on Reality Radio 101. And he is joining us tonight to talk about his new book, Grow Lemons Where You Think You Can't. And Matthew's going to tell us a little bit about Stephen before we welcome him on the show.
Yeah, so Stephen speaks and writes about gardens, farms, and food production. A lifelong gardener with a horticulture degree from the University of Guelph, he's worked in greenhouse and nursery production, plant propagation, biological controls, horticultural supplies, and farm marketing. Stephen loves sharing personal stories in his talks and writings. Stephen's books include the bestseller No Guff Vegetable Gardening, his award-winning Grow Figs Where You Think You Can't, Grow Lemons Where You Think You Can't, Grow Gardeners, the kid-tested gardening with children, and his latest Gardening with Emma, co-authored with his 13-year-old daughter, Emma Biggs.
That's right. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Hi, Joanne. Hi, Matthew. Thanks for having me on the line.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome. And we would say that Emma is the other half of Garage Gardeners, right?
That's right.
So thank you for joining us here. And we're Matt and I were just talking about how we don't know much about growing lemons, and so we're excited, and I'm sure our listeners are too, to learn more about how to grow, because they think of you need to live in Florida to grow lemons.
Oh, yeah, and I've had so much fun growing lemons here in Toronto, and they are so much easier than a lot of people think. So I hope I inspire a couple people to give it a try tonight.
Excellent, excellent. Well, why don't we start and you tell us a bit about the book? I know your previous book was about figs, so why don't you tell us a bit about the book and what inspired you to write about lemons?
So I've had lemon trees for a long time. My first lemon I got about 25 years ago. I worked in the UK at a nursery that specialized in citrus and figs there. And I came home from there with a Meyer lemon tree that I still have to this day.
Wow.
And then maybe about 18 years ago, some really special neighbors gave me this tree this lemon tree they had been growing for a long time. It's probably about 50 years old, and they entrusted me with this tree. And so those two trees really got my love of lemon growing going. And then I was toying with the idea about writing about lemons. And then I was at this really amazing nursery in BC a few years ago. I met a guy growing lemons in the ground in BC. Of course, it's warmer there than it is here, but just a real guru of citrus growing. And I thought, that's it. I've met a really interesting person. It's time to put down lots of information and talk to other experts and make a book. And so that's how the book came to be.
Wonderful. Okay.
Wondering, the other lemon, you had the Meyer lemon, but also the other lemon that you had, the 50-year-old one. What was the variety of that? Did you know?
It is an unknown lemon. I don't know what it is. So the story is that my neighbor grew this lemon from seed. He planted it in 1967. And the thing is, with a seed-grown lemon, sometimes they can take a long time to flower and fruit because they're not mature. They're not ready to make flowers and fruit. And so what's usually done is you graft a piece of a known lemon onto a seed-grown root. And so when he was talking to another neighbor about this problem, the neighbor said, oh, well, you just need to graft a piece of my lemon on top of that. And so that's what they did, and that's the lemon that I have to this day. So I don't know what it is. They didn't know. It looks like a supermarket lemon, so it's probably a well-known variety or something very similar.
Okay. So you've gotten fruit from it, obviously.
I've had lots of fruit from it over the years and lots of flowers. So what I like to tell people about lemons, because people ask the good question, well, why would you bother growing lemons when it's extra work and when you can buy them at the supermarket?
Okay.
And so the thing about lemons is that the flowers are intensely fragrant. It's just a beautiful smell. So they're really a fantastic patio plant in the summertime. If you like spending time on your patio or you have a place where you sit outdoors, imagine having a lemon tree there and having this amazing fragrance. So that's one of the things I like to tell people. But then the other thing that a lot of people don't know is that the lemon leaves are just packed with really a beautiful smell and lots of essential oils in there, so you can cook with them. And just last week, I took some wedges of mozzarella, I wrapped them in lemon leaves, and I threw them on the grill for a couple minutes. And what happens is that those lemon leaves impart a beautiful flavor into whatever you're cooking. So even though that lemon produces lemons that don't look that different from what I get at the supermarket, there's so much else to it too. It's so versatile in the kitchen with those leaves, and then those flowers just smell so amazing.
And how does the fruit compare to the ones in the grocery store? Are they basically the same?
So on this particular lemon, it's not unlike the grocery store ones, but I should tell listeners too. There's other lemons too. And so the one that I'm a huge fan of is the Meyer lemon, and that's that first lemon tree that I had. And some people might have seen them in the grocery stores. They're available for just a short period usually in the winter time. This is the Meyer lemon is very thin-skinned, and it has a very delicate flavor. And it has, I think it's tangerine bloodlines in it. So when it's very ripe, sometimes you'll perceive a little bit of an orangey color in it. So it's got a unique flavor unto its own, and just a lovely lemon for cooking with. But the thing I love to do with it too is I'll make it into a sorbet. I'll zest it. I'll keep all that zest. I'll juice it, and then use some water and sugar and that zest, and I'll make a sorbet, a lemon ice, and just a lovely fruit to have around.
Wow, that is great. And are they the size-wise? Because I know at the nurseries too, you can get the Meyer lemon trees, right, Matt? That's what they sell.
So fruit size-wise is smaller usually than the lemons that you'll get at the grocery store.
Okay.
I'd say they're more, they can be bigger, but often they're egg size or a little bit bigger. But the plant itself is more bush-like than some of the other lemon varieties. And I have kept mine for many years. I kept it around knee height as a bush in a pot. So if anyone is daunted by the thought of having this massive lemon tree, having to deal with it in the winter, it doesn't have to be that way. You can keep them. It's like bonsai, really. You're in control of how big the things get.
Okay.
But the Meyer lemon in particular has a bushy form, so it's easy to keep it as a fairly compact plant.
Okay.
Very nice. So we're talking about growing all these lemons and all these wonderful benefits. So what about some of the growing conditions as we get our listeners excited about going out and buying a lemon tree? What do they need at home at those growing conditions to be successful with their lemon?
Yeah, so for growing conditions, you want sun is best, full sun. And I have a couple of mine in full sun. I should point out, though, as backyard gardeners, we don't always have perfect conditions.
Right.
So if you have partial sun, definitely try that too. But full sun is best. And in a container, I'd say that one of the most important things for lemons is that you remember that they don't like wet feed. And what I mean by that is they don't want to be in standing water. You don't want soggy, wet soil. And so usually you want to make sure that you have a soil mix that drains well, and you want them in a sunny spot. And then the other thing to think about is where to place them so that you can enjoy that smell, because I mentioned before the beautiful fragrance from the flowers. So I always tell people, remember the patio, or remember putting it somewhere where you'll walk past it.
Yeah, the flowers, they smell absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. Now, do you have them inside, most of the year, and then for the summer you bring them outside?
That's a great question. So, and I think that's the big question that a lot of people have, Joanne, is so where do I put these and when? So through the late spring and summer and into the early fall, my lemons are outside.
Okay.
And then over the winter, I give them some protection. So I should say that the fruit on a lemon tree will freeze at about -3 Celsius. And depending on which lemon variety you have, the plant would freeze maybe -4 or -6 Celsius for a Meyer lemon.
Okay.
So anyway, the long and short of it is you don't want it to get cold enough so the fruit freezes. So -3 is a bit too cold. So you can keep them over the winter somewhere that drops down to about freezing. I've kept them many years in my garage. And what surprises people is that when it's cold and when it's dark, like it is in a garage, they slow right down. They stop growing, and they might shed a few leaves, but they'll make it through the winter quite well. And so I've done that many times, but other times when I didn't have, and I should say that I have my garage insulated.
Okay.
So, and I have a baseboard heater in there, so when we get those spells of, say, -20 Celsius over the winter, in the dead of winter, I can put that on low just to prevent my garage from getting below that -2 level, just to make sure I protect it. So if you're doing the garage method, just make sure that you do have, if you're in an attached garage to a house, often you get heat escape from the house, so that's not a worry. But if you have a standalone building, you want to think about how cold it gets in there. But other things that people do is some people will bring them right into the house.
Okay.
And if you have a sunny window, that's an option too. Sometimes the house, what you want to watch out for is that the air in the house can be dry.
Yes,
so you want to mist the plant.
Okay.
And you want to watch out for spider mites, which is an insect pest in the house. Dry conditions, they can be a problem. But they'll do very well in the house. And the beautiful thing, I used to keep them in the living room at my old house, is the smell. So back to the fragrance from those flowers. When you, even one little flower open, and it'll just smell amazing in the whole room.
Oh, wow.
But there's other things you can do too. I have a friend who has an attic in her house that's not heated, but it has a bright window. So she takes her lemon trees up there for the winter, and they absolutely love it. Cool and bright is really the best. If that's an option for you, if you have that combination of cool and bright for your lemon tree over the winter, that's best.
So even a basement window or a basement that might be cooler.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Or if you have a 3-season sunroom that doesn't dip down too cold in the winter, that's a good option too.
Okay. And so it's interesting that they still, so do they rest once we bring them in? So, but they still need the, sometimes, you bring a plant in and it's okay to have less light because let's say they're resting or going, I don't know if we say it's going dormant necessarily.
So when it comes to watering them in the winter and resting, it really, whether they grow or not, really depends on how warm it is.
Okay.
And whether you water them will really depend on how wet the soil is. So I'm not a big fan of a general rule like water every week or every 2 weeks because what you really need to do is stick your finger into the soil.
Okay.
And if they're in the warm house and they're growing, then you can, water them fairly regularly, just doing that soil test with your finger. And but if they're somewhere where they're semi-dormant, like in the garage where it's cool and they're not growing at all, then you really, if it's at all moist when you put your finger in the soil, then don't water. Wait a little bit longer.
Okay. Oh.
Well, we'll get him back, okay? So
we'll get him back. Why don't you recap what we're...
Yeah, so if you're just tuning in, we had, and we'll get back, Stephen Biggs. He is an author of the new amazing book we're talking about now, Growing Lemons Where You Think You Can't. So if you have some questions or you have some lemons at home, perhaps some other citrus, Stephen also has a book, Grow Figs Where You Don't Think You Can't.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
or think where you can't. You can write us here at instudio101 at gmail.com, and Stephen will be happy to hear all your questions and give you a shout.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wondered about growing them, so I'm kind of intrigued. And I wonder if any of our other listeners, I know we've got many listeners from around the world, so maybe some in different climates and how you grow your lemons. We'd love to hear from you.
Exactly. I'm just surprised that Stephen's talking about overwintering them. I'm just like the garage. I would never have thought that they could have taken -2 to -6.
Now, I think he does live in a city and where it's kind of a little bit warmer.
Yes.
And he did say that he has a baseboard heater in his garage, so it's doesn't get as cold. I'm in the burbs with a big garage, but it definitely gets cold.
Much colder,
yeah. Much colder. My bedroom's above the garage, and it also gets cold. So, but it would be a cool room with a sunny window, so that could work there.
And that's what I'm thinking. I have a bright window in the second bedroom that we kind of have just as our library area, but we don't heat it during the winter because the rest of the house.
And does it have bright light?
Yeah, and it's very bright all the time. It's southeast facing, so I have a little spot. I could maybe put one down by the window. It wouldn't really lower below 16 or 14 degrees.
Yeah.
We have Steve back.
Oh, so there you go. Welcome back, Stephen.
Hi.
Matthew and I have both figured out where we have a spot in our own homes where I think we could end up getting a lemon tree. So thank you for inspiring us.
Oh, that's great. What kind of spaces are you thinking of?
Well, my bedroom is above our garage, so it tends to be a little on the cooler side, but it faces south. So now I do have shutters that you kind of have to open in the during the day, which I do in the winter. So I would have pretty south, but through the shutters. So hopefully that would be enough light. But the room tends to be cooler. I do know it is dry though in the winter, right?
Yes.
So would you recommend, so you mentioned misting it. Would you also, I know Matthew and I have recommended to people with their house plants or their Christmas, the Christmas plants sometimes, sitting in the pot on a tray of pebbles and having some water in the pebbles?
That's a great trick. Yeah, if you use those pebbles with water, and then you get a little bit of a higher humidity around the plant, that's an excellent idea.
Okay. Okay. All right. And Matthew, where you were thinking yours in a second bedroom, you said southeast?
Yeah. I have a southeast facing. It's always very bright, and we don't heat the room because usually the rest of the place keeps it warm. It keeps it like 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. So maybe I'll try it there.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think those both sound good.
Okay.
And so I should say to you, and I've said this to many friends and other lemon growers, when you bring them in the winter time, don't be shocked if they do lose some leaves, because what's happening is that the plant is outside in the fall, it's high humidity, it's cool, and then you bring the plant into this hot, dry environment, and it says, oh, wait on a minute, and it'll drop a few leaves.
Okay.
So you can actually bring them in a little bit earlier when the difference in humidity and temperature between the outdoors and the house is a bit less. Some people will do that, but if they drop a few leaves, don't think that you've killed your plant. Just know that happens very often, and they grow back.
Okay.
So I always like to tell people that's a possibility, and don't consider yourself a plant killer if you do that. It's quite common.
Yes, it's common with hibiscus and some other like Benjamina. You move that from one end of the room to the other, and it just objects, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So some plants can be a little particular, but it takes sometimes more effort than people think to actually kill a plant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, we have a question. P. Ryson 1976 writes in, hi, what an interesting topic. Who knew? Can we get fresh lemons all year long with a tree or bush, I guess?
What a good question. Yeah, so you can get fresh lemons all year long. And the neat thing about the lemon is that it will flower and have fruit at the same time.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So, if you're thinking about something like apple trees, for example, here in Ontario, then they flower in the spring and you get the fruit in the late summer or the fall, period. There's no in between. But the neat thing about lemons is you can have flowers, you can have large fruit that are ripe, and you can have small fruit that are just forming all at the same time on the tree. And another neat thing about that is that even when those larger fruit are ripe, you don't have to pick them right away. You can leave those on the tree for a very long time, and it's almost like a natural storage system. So if your tree has a few ripe lemons on there, there's no rush to use those. You can use them as you need them.
Okay.
Oh, that's very neat.
That is very neat.
How long does it take the fruit to mature?
It can be almost a year from flower until picking. So, but you can have different crops on there, as I was saying, at the same time.
Okay. So should we look for one or can you buy them with, let's say, already flowering, or let's say already have a lemon on it? Like, is that something you should
Very
look for?
Very often, the ones I see in the garden centers will have flowers or small fruit on them.
Okay.
And then I guess that leads to the question that I often get is, well, where can I buy them? And I guess my observation has been that there's a lot of garden centers now that are stocking lemons and other citrus trees in the spring. So if you're looking, if you want a lemon tree, do look around. A lot of the independent garden centers seem to be stocking them, and especially in the springtime.
Okay.
Yeah, the garden center that I work for, we try to end up having the Meyer lemons specifically, and then another lime and a calamundian type of fruit. We get them in as soon as we can because a lot of people are always looking for some quality plants. So
would you have them now at the store?
Yeah, I think I've got lemons and limes at the store right now. I don't think I have any calamundians or mandarin oranges or anything like that. But I'm pretty sure I got both.
Okay.
So. That's good to know.
So definitely.
So good. So our listeners could check their local garden centers and see. This is often where we recommend that you do choose a local reputable nursery, as opposed to big box stores probably wouldn't carry it, or wouldn't be, there might potentially be more issues, right? Or any experience with big box stores carrying lemons, Stephen?
I've seen lemons and other citrus at big box stores sometimes too. So, it's hit and miss. The other thing I should mention, the fellow in BC whom I met who gave me so much great advice, he has a mail order nursery.
Oh.
And if you look on YouTube for Fruit, Trees, and More, Bob Duncan, he has a video all about how he grows lemons in BC. You can't do that here.
Right.
But he sells lemons, and he doesn't just sell the one or two common varieties. He gets in lots of neat ones. So if you look up Fruit, Trees, and More, their website, and get their plant list, if you're going for the exotic, like the variegated lemon with the variegated fruit, or maybe some of the weird citrus like a finger lime, then that's a fun place to know about.
Okay, we have to ask you this question then, at least I do. Stephen, how many lemon trees do you have?
Yes.
Actually, I think right now I have 4 lemon trees.
Okay.
I have 4 lemon trees. We have a calamandan, we have a kumquat. No, I have 6 lemons. Sorry,
okay.
The ponderosa lemons. So, and a calamandan and a kumquat. And then what I'm really excited about is a yuzu tree. Have either of you heard about yuzu?
No, I've never heard of that.
So this is a citrus that can go down to minus 12 Celsius in the wintertime.
Oh, okay.
So from a cold hardiness perspective, it's fantastic. We can't keep them outdoors here, but it just means that if you're putting them somewhere like a garage that has the potential to get colder than, say, the minus 2 I was talking about earlier,
yes,
it's amazingly hardy. And this is a tree. The fruit from it is really prized in Korea and Japan for use in sauces. And I got my first yuzu harvest last year.
Okay.
And so anyway, yuzu is a really fun citrus, and that's one of the citrus that I have too.
Okay. Now, can you spell that for our listeners?
Yeah. So yuzu is Y-U-Z-U.
Okay, just like it sounds.
And I found that. I was all set to order it mail order when I found it at a nursery here in the GTA. So as I was saying before, it's kind of hit and miss. Sometimes you're lucky and you'll hit a nursery that's just got in a load of citrus and you'll find exactly what you want.
Okay. And so your 6 trees are outside right now, and then will all 6 go back into the garage, or will you keep some in the house? Have you kind of perfected that?
So I should say that the garage and the house were my 2 places for overwintering, but a couple years ago I built a lean-to over a stairwell to the basement. And I kept looking at that space because it's all concrete, and I thought, that's like a heat sink. The concrete will hold the heat and in the day and radiate it at night. So I built a little lean-to greenhouse over top of that, and I keep that right around the freezing mark in the wintertime. And that is now where I'm putting my citrus for the winter. So it's a little lean-to basement greenhouse.
Okay. That's exciting.
That's so neat. I find it so fascinating that the lemons can take such low temperatures. I just picture this citrus, this tropical feeling in my head.
Yeah.
And then you're saying you're keeping it at like 0. I would think that they would just start to pop.
Matthew, I'm sorry, you're cutting out there, and I didn't hear your question.
Oh, no, I was just commenting on how amazing it is that you think of these lemons and you think of this tropical kind of picture in your head, and then you've got them in places and conditions that are near 0 degrees.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's another thing that inspired me. There's a really great book out there. I think it's The Land Where Lemons Grow.
Oh, okay.
And it's really a travel guide to Italy and citrus fruit by the author's name was Helena Attlee, I believe. And it's just fascinating. But, of course, I jumped to the chapters on lemons straight off when I read the book. And so she talks about lemons being grown in the far north of Italy in the mountains, in an area that was far too cold for lemons. But there's a big lake in the one area called Lake Garda. And Lake Garda was this lemon-producing hub before the days of transport by truck and train. So they would grow the lemons around the lake, which moderated the temperatures. They grew them on the hillside, and in the wintertime, they would put wooden structures around these lemons to get them to survive through the winter. But the extreme temperatures were moderated by this neat little microclimate they had. And even if you get down into the Amalfi region of Italy, she talks about this in her book too. What they do is in the wintertime they put up straw mats over top of the lemon groves to minimize the winter extremes and protect the lemons. So it's not just us here in North America, in northern part of North America, going to great extent to protect our lemons. It's actually, there's a long tradition of doing it.
Okay.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I have just another question. We were talking about the lemons and the fruiting and the flowering at the same time. Are they self-pollinating lemons? Do you have to do anything special to pollinate the lemons?
You don't need to do anything, no.
Okay, so they are self-pollinating.
Yeah, and with some fruit you need 2 different ones, and
right.
With lemons, no, don't worry about it.
Okay, so you can just have one Meyer lemon and you're set to go. So I have another question. We often get asked what to feed the people who have lemons at home, what to fertilize them with. Would you recommend, do you have anything, numbers like the NPK ratio or
so my big recommendation when it comes to feeding anything is I'm not a big fan of buying specialized fertilizers for everything. I tend to buy a general purpose feed and use that as widely as I can. So that's my approach to gardening in general. And but I should say that with lemons, you do sometimes get some yellowing, some chlorosis it's called, between the veins.
Right.
And this could be when the soil acidity isn't quite right, and it means that some things aren't available. So,
right.
As I said, I tend to feed a general purpose, but if I get that yellowing, and once in a while I do, then I'll just give it a little bit of acid fertilizer, a liquid acid feed. And there are acid fertilizers available often for cedars, for example. You'll see acid fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
So something like that on occasion usually will solve that problem.
Okay, and so just as you're thinking, just a general feed, like a 20-20-20 kind of thing is fine, or?
I lost you there, Matthew, but I think you were asking about general feed. So very often I've used something like a 14 slow release.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I was asking.
I find that makes life easy. I can just put it on top of the soil in the spring once, and that's it. But if you were using liquid feed too, if you're using organic feeds, usually the numbers are lower, like 1-1-1, something like that.
Right.
You could use that, or the synthetics are often numbers like 20-20. I tend to just believe in those all-purpose feeds, so you don't have a pantry full of 20 different products. So
yeah, we both kind of subscribe to that as well, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's easy to do, but yeah, so those would work fine.
Excellent. We do want to remind our listeners that if you've just tuned in, we have Stephen Biggs joining us with his talking about his book, Grow Lemons Where You Think You Can't. Stephen is also a radio show host. His own radio show is also here on Reality Radio 101. And we want to let anybody who wants to write in questions to let you know that we forgot to mention this earlier, Stephen, that we are you have a book that you're willing to give away to one of our listeners, one of our lucky listeners who writes in a question.
Yeah,
so,
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, so that is great. We really appreciate that.
So Steve is giving away a book?
He is.
Okay, are you keeping track of the names, or did you want me to?
No, Matt's got that down.
Oh, good.
He's good to go.
Okay, because I was in the galley making some coffee, Steve, and
you know how good his coffee is, Steve.
Right, so... Okay, I'm glad. So you guys are keeping track. So, and that's anybody who writes in. Obviously, you're not going to call.
Right.
So, folks, if you have a question for Steve or Joanne or Matt, give us an email right now. Our email address, again, is instudio101@gmail.com.
Perfect. And so we thank everybody for your questions, because I think it's a common thing. People are afraid. Do you get that question a lot, Stephen, that people are nervous or hesitant to try and grow lemons?
I do, and or people have killed one and they worry about it, and then I talk about the lemon trees and other things that I've killed.
Yes.
So I think as someone who does a lot of garden communications, I always try to tell people about the plants I killed. And my daughter this year took a picture of me with 2 dead rosemary plants, just so that we could advertise the fact that we kill plants too.
Yes, definitely. As do we, right? And that's I think something we all do. We're testing things out in our own gardens, in our own limits, in our own situations, and so that we can help others.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
So,
A lot of people worry about killing lemons, and they're reluctant to try them because it seems like something really exotic. But I guess the thing to remember is that it's something that's grown so widely in Mediterranean areas.
Mm-hmm.
And in Mediterranean areas, there is a cool part of the year. And, granted, it's cooler here than there, which is why you need to give them a bit of protection.
Right.
But this whole idea of keeping them somewhere cool over the winter, really, when you think about where they're grown commercially, it's not that much of a stretch.
I'm intrigued that they also need to stay in the sun, because I guess part of me, I think like the poinsettia, where you bring it in and you kind of have to have it go dark for a little bit or something, I guess, but that doesn't have fruit, so obviously it's different.
Well, whether they have sun or dark does depend on whether it's warm enough for them to keep growing. So if it's in the main part of the house that's heated, you do want them to have sun.
Okay.
Because they'll be trying to grow.
Okay.
And when plants are inside and it's dim light, then you get that stretched out growth. It's less than ideal.
Right.
So sun is good. But if they're cool, they're in this semi-dormant state. They don't really grow. They just wait for warmer temperatures.
Okay.
And that's when you can get away with having them somewhere totally dark. And
Right.
so that's a beautiful option for some people, because I meet a lot of people who say, I don't have a greenhouse, I don't have a big sunny window, I don't know where I'd put a lemon. But that same person might have a garage that only gets down to the freezing mark in winter, and that would be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, do we have to bring them outside in the sun? Like if you have a sunny window and a warm, a perfect spot, let's say in our homes, can it stay 12 months of the year inside?
Well, you could. I guess the thing to think about is that the quality of light inside is almost never as good as what's outside.
Right.
So you tend to end up with this more stretched out growth.
Okay.
Because they do put on their biggest burst of growth spring and early summer when I put them outside.
Okay. That
And
makes
if
sense.
they're inside for that and the light is dim, then you'd get this lanky growth. So, if you're an apartment dweller, I'd say go for it. Give it a try. But if you have a patio or a balcony or a yard, that's the best spot, because you really will get a more intense sunlight.
Okay. Well, that's a good idea, because balcony, Matthew, you have a balcony. My mother-in-law would love to grow. She has tons of sun, but she's in a condo with a balcony. So,
yeah, that's where I'm going to put mine. I'll have my winter spot for this winter, and I'll put her out in the spring. And yeah, so they grow that main growth period in the spring as the days grow longer. What about pruning time if someone needs to shape or cut back that tree? Is there a specific time or technique we need to be doing?
That's a great question about the pruning, Matthew. And so what my approach is to prune them just as I'm putting them outside.
Okay.
And that is usually mid to late May here in Toronto.
Okay.
And that's when I give them a good heavy pruner, even before that in the wintertime. But before they start putting on all that new growth in the spring, you want to give them a good prune. So for me, that's usually early spring. And but then over the summer, I don't do much, but I will. Sometimes you get one or two branches that just go way out of control, and I'll lop those back a little bit.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you. Do we want to read the? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got
another comment or question.
Yeah. Peter's writing in. Hello. This is so exciting. I have always wanted to try to grow lemons, and now I'm excited to do so. Thanks for all the great advice. By the way, where can we buy Stephen's book? And thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for asking, and it is on my website, stephenbiggs.ca. So STEVENBIGGS.ca. And if anybody is getting the book and you want me to sign it or inscribe it, just send me an email through my website too, and I would be delighted to do that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Stephen.
Will you sign the copy we give away this evening?
I will. And
Excellent.
If there's a message that I need to put in there too, just let me know, and I'd be pleased to.
Perfect.
We will do that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Excellent. And so Jeffrey has written in another question as well. He said, my lemon growing question is how to get rid of spider mites on lemons inside over winter. Great question, Jeff.
Jeffrey, that's a great question. So I guess for me, spider mite control begins in the fall as I bring plants inside. And usually in the fall, I will trim them back a bit. And at the same time, I will give them a spray of insecticidal soap and horticultural oil.
Okay.
I do the two of those in the fall, and in fact, I'll do it a couple times. I'll do it once outside, and then I'll do it again just before I bring them in. And usually that the soap will take care of the adult spider mites, and the horticultural oil helps with some of the eggs. And then if you have an outbreak of spider mites over the winter, that's always the challenge inside, right? Because we don't have a place to spray usually inside.
Yes.
And so I have had a couple years where the spider mites got the better of me, but then we get that January thaw often. And so I'll take the lemons out on the deck, and I'll just give them a spray with, again, insecticidal soap and horticultural oil. And that takes care of it for me.
Okay. Now, are you doing them separately, or is that something you mix together?
I'm putting them together in one spray.
Okay, thank you. It's a good thing. I thought that was a silly question, but okay, it was a
No,
good question.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
I've never combined the two.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I should say, too, you meet people who make up their own sprays with olive oil and dish soap, and it has the same modes of action as insecticidal soap from the garden center and horticultural oil. But the challenge with that is sometimes it can be a little hotter and you're more likely to burn the leaves. So if you're not sure what you're doing, then it doesn't hurt to fall back on the commercial products because they give you a rate at which you should be fine.
Right, right. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's good. So you're right, too. That is the similar concept. You hear that often where people, like even in Facebook groups, everybody says, use Dawn, and that type of thing, and some soap and some oil. So that is good. Excellent. So you've been able to overcome the spider mites. Would those sticky traps come in handy a little bit there, too? I know those only really get the adults.
Yeah, the sticky traps for spider mites, I don't find them for spider mites that helpful.
Okay.
Really, ideally, what you can do is every so often turn over a few leaves and look on the underside, because that's where you most often see the spider mites. And even better, if you just have a little hand lens, because those spider mites they're like little pinpricks. So sometimes you're lucky enough to see them moving, and that helps you pick up on them.
Oh, okay.
But the best thing you can do is just check for them regularly.
Okay.
The worst thing that can happen, and I had this happen on my curry leaf plant this past winter, is I wasn't paying attention, and by the time I noticed the spider mite infestation, there was webbing everywhere. And when they get to that point, you've got a real problem, and you've let it slide far too long.
Okay.
So if you can catch it sooner, you'll often see as the infestation is starting, there's just a light little stippling on the leaves. From those spider mites on the underside. You'll see this stippling, so watch out for that.
Okay.
Very cool. So Sharon writes in, hi, love the show. Sharon says she also listens to your show, The Garage Gardeners. Love both shows. Very interesting topic, and thank you.
Oh, hi, Sharon. Thank you for writing in.
We also have another question. Steve, can we start a lemon tree at any time of the year? Not sure, Steve, if you were meaning by seed or just bringing it in or buying one. But if you'd let us know,
he adds on. He says he would love to get a tree for his daughter for Christmas.
Yeah.
If you're growing it from seed, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I love growing things from seed. The only unknown there is that they go through a juvenile period before they fruit.
Okay.
So it could be a decade.
Some
people I know have grown them, and it's a year or two.
Yeah.
But there's that juvenile period. So if you want faster gratification, buy a tree.
Buy a tree.
The other thing is people should know, I mentioned grafting, but you can root lemons too. And so I have made new lemon trees just by rooting cuttings. And they don't root, say, as readily as like a geranium or impatiens, but they do root. So if anybody out there likes propagating plants, and you know somebody who has a lemon tree, then first thing you should say to them is, hey, would you save me those pieces you've pruned off so that I can try rooting them, because they will root.
Okay.
Would the best time for that be again in the spring or in the beginnings of the months when the growth is becoming more active?
Spring is good, because then you can, I put them somewhere where I'll monitor them all summer long. It's warm. I'm not worried about them possibly freezing. So, that always works. But if you have a good setup indoors, somewhere where you can keep them warm enough over the winter, then try that too. In my experience, a little bit of bottom heat doesn't hurt. So if you're using, people will often use a heat mat to start seeds.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of heat from the bottom with lemons is helpful in rooting too.
Okay. Now, our guest who was asking that question, he mentioned getting a tree for his daughter for Christmas. Do they tend to be around in November, December for gift giving?
Well, that's the challenge. By the way, I love that idea, because we got my daughter Emma a calamandan as a birthday gift once. So I think that's so awesome, giving kids special plants as gifts. I love that idea.
Yeah, me too.
If it's in the fall, it might be a little bit harder to find them. So you might want to not plan to just get it at the last minute, but call around a little bit first and make sure you found someone who will have that in stock in the fall.
And how about our mail order that you recommended, fruit trees and more mail order? Would that be, do you think that would be a good solution?
It's a good question. I don't know offhand what their shipping season is.
Okay.
So usually with those sorts of places, they tend to do a big batch of orders all at once.
Right.
So it would be worth checking ahead of time.
Okay, yeah. So that's a couple resources for you there. Our guest, you're Stephen, and our guest who's writing in is named Steve. Yeah. So it makes it a little bit confusing, but gives you some options, because I think you're right. Often it's to send it in the mail. If it's cold in the winter, they may not send it. But if you've got a good hiding place so that you can buy one now and kind of keep it for her for Christmas, then that might be a better option.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, this topic is great. It makes me really want to go and buy a lemon tree, because now it doesn't seem quite as daunting if I have a place to do it, and it doesn't need anything. I mean, I thought there would be more requirements, like more. I hate to say paraphernalia, but more that goes into it.
Yeah. I agree. And especially with the questions at the garden center, everyone seems to be worried what to feed it and how much and when. And once in the spring with your 14 is like, how easy is that?
Yeah, for sure. It seems easier to grow than an orchid.
Yeah, it does actually.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It really is.
Yeah. Easier than an orchid.
Easier than an orchid, yeah. My orchid stresses me out, man. Do I cut that stem? Don't I cut that stem? Do I, have I watered it enough? Did I water it too much? Like, it's stressful. Is it time for fertilizing? I don't know.
Ice cubes, no ice cubes.
I know, ice cubes, no ice cubes. There's a lot that goes in. That's a whole other show, though.
Yes.
Well, they are pretty forgiving. I mentioned the one tree that I've had for about 25 years, the Meyer lemon. And it was years before I really had somewhere to grow it properly. I was a student, so it was in windows and balconies and small pots, and I just neglected that thing terribly. And but here we are 25 years later, and now I have the space, and it does really well. So they're a fairly forgiving plant, too.
Oh, that's good to know. So you've had the lemon tree longer than you've had Emma.
I have. That's right. Yeah.
Oh, that is great. Well, thank you so much. So, did you have another question or anything else you want to share with us, Stephen? Yeah. So, where can our listeners find you? We definitely want them to listen to your show here on Reality Radio 101. And you are Tuesdays.
I'm the first Tuesday of the month at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Time.
Okay.
And it's co-hosted with Emma, my daughter. And our focus is pushing garden boundaries. So people who are doing things that they're not supposed to be able to do in the garden. Very often that's extending the season, growing plants that aren't supposed to grow. But last week we had a guy who's powering a hot tub with a compost pile. So we go for that angle of what you shouldn't be able to do in the garden.
Okay, cool. And I saw that picture too on Facebook. That was very cool. On Instagram too. So our listeners can also follow you on Facebook.
I'm on Facebook. Stephen Biggs Writer is my Facebook page.
Okay.
And I'm on Twitter as the Stephen Biggs. And my website, stephenbiggs.ca, if you go there, you can sign up. I have a newsletter that I send out about monthly. And I have tips in there about growing edibles, gardening with kids, and food. So,
wonderful, wonderful. And your Instagram is at Garage Gardeners.
That's right.
Correct.
Yes. Thank you. I forgot Instagram. And I should mention Emma, my daughter, has an Instagram. She's way better at it than I am. And if anybody loves tomatoes, it's Emma Biggs _grows. So we kind of work together, but she has her own account for the tomatoes. So if anybody is into edibles, check that out too.
Excellent, excellent. And we would love to talk to Emma at another date because I know her, the two of you, or even have you in the studio, which would be fun to talk.
Would be fun.
Yeah, that would really be fun to talk about vegetables and Emma's book. Remind me of the title of Emma's book.
Gardening with Emma.
There you go, Gardening with Emma. So that is wonderful. I think it's so inspiring to have kids that are interested in gardening. I know my son, when he's now 21, but when he was 19, he started a vegetable garden, not as elaborate as Emma's, but he's still having fun with it and experimenting and different things. So it's been, and our backyard has been under construction, so we've had to move like plants to the driveway and to the front porch, to the neighbors, different things like that. So it's been really interesting.
Okay.
So
That's
Stephen,
good.
Just before we do the draw here, just to remind us, can all your books as well as Emma's book be found at stephenbiggs.ca?
That's right. I have them all at stephenbiggs.ca, and I have some of them are also on amazon.ca too, if people prefer shopping there.
Perfect.
Excellent.
And so we're going to do drum roll, please. And the winner is Peter. So we will email you. Gary will email you and get your information, and Stephen will send you a copy of his book. So that's exciting.
And if you'd like a message in the book, Stephen is willing to sign it. Just let our producer Gary know, and he contacts you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. And we'll definitely talk about doing this again because there's lots of topics. So we have so much crossover between our shows.
That would be fun. It's fun to be at the other end and be the one being interviewed too. So thanks for having me on the show, Joanne.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Steve, I just want to say, let Emma know my tomatoes, I think, are coming in beautifully.
I'll tell her.
You tell her that. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Stephen.
Well, that's great. So put my name on a go to work tomorrow. Do you work tomorrow?
I don't until Thursday. So
oh my gosh. Okay. So we need to go in and put our name on a couple of lemon trees.
Pick out some good ones for us and put them aside, and we're going to start our lemon project.
I
want one.
You want one
3.
too?
I do.
Okay.
3. There we
There
go.
So you're selling the trees now, different varieties or just one variety?
It's usually the Meyer lemon that Stephen was talking about.
And is that like a normal lemon you'd put in tea and stuff like that, like cut it up, or more used for cooking?
Yeah, and he was saying that
with some more egg shaped and egg size and thinner skinned, so it's not like the full grocery store lemon, but they still have fragrant flowers and
and I've had guests come in and say they just use it like a house lemon. They cut it up and put it in their water and overfish.
But it's a little
I need to
smaller.
get one of those.
Yeah.
Is there a lot? Do you have a lot in stock or just a few?
We do usually get a good number in there for sure.
Okay. When would they be there for another week? Maybe a week or so. Okay.
They should be there. I should be able to get us some when I go back in. So.
All right.
Oh, if you do, just that'd be great. And I'll pay you for it when I, if you grab one.
Yeah, cool.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So that's good. Well, I hope our listeners, everybody did write in some great questions.
Yes.
Hope you enjoyed that episode. And again, it'll be available as a podcast if you didn't catch the whole thing. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app to Down the Garden Path, and you will catch the rest of that show.
That's it. Exactly. You can always reach Joanne and I off the radio if you ever need to. You can reach me at Matthew at naturalaffinitydesigns.ca or naturalaffinitydesigns.ca my website, and you can find Joanne at
downtoearth.ca with the number 2. And you can all my links are there as well. And we want our listeners to know that. So this is, I guess, next week.
Next week is September in the Garden.
That's right. Next week is September in the Garden. I can't believe that already. It feels like we just did August in the Garden.
It does. It does.
We did, didn't we?
We did. And you can always reach us here as well at In Studio 101.
That's right.
At gmail.com.
That's right. And we want to thank everybody once again for listening to us and joining us here on Down the Garden Path on Reality Radio 101.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.